Are you sitting comfortably?
Very comfortably, thank you.
You all good?
All good.
Are you ready to talk to me?
Like every day.
Like every day. Are you going to be open, honest and tell it how it is?
Of course.
Good. All right. Well, let's do this then, shall we? Episode 7, Beyond the Dots podcast, Exploring My Inner Circle. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Gabriel Galletti. Hang on. This is going to be fun. So today, I am introducing Gabriel Galletti. This is podcast number 7, part of my Beyond the Dots series, where I've been exploring my inner circle. So I want to introduce Gabriel today. So Gabriel is a former CEO turned published author. So interesting. Now, we worked together, just for everyone's kind of benefit, we worked together in early 2000s. I think that's aging us both really considerably, although I think we both look really good. Just moving on. Anyway, we worked together in social care and, but you have had a long and illustrious, successful career internationally as well as kind of nationally as CEO, big kind of leadership roles. And then you've turned CEO, you've turned author. You've turned a very successful kind of published author of recent. So I'm really keen to explore that and to kind of get a sense of, I guess, how you went from leader to apprentice and how you went from tutor to learner, I guess. So tell me, what happened? Mr. CEO to Mr. kind of smash it in the face, criminal, kind of investigative author extraordinaire. Tell me, what's gone on?
So I suppose that if you've done one thing for a long time, and I was either a managing director or a CEO for 30 years. And so that gets to a place where doing similar, so for example, going and becoming a non-exec, would have been relatively straightforward and would have been a natural progression for me, but it wasn't one that I wanted to make. To say I was sick of boardrooms was to understate that. So I wanted to do something completely different. And I'd always read. So I read books all the time. And in my early career, I did an awful lot of traveling in the UK. So this was before I became an MD and I was regional manager or regional director, and I'd be away 5 nights. And in those 5 nights, I'd read. And occasionally I'd jot things down or think I could write that better. Or I've got a story. And in my mind's eye for maybe 10 years, I had a story. And I thought I can make that into something. So I decided that's what I was going to do. And a bit like giving up smoking, I told everybody that I was going to do it. And that puts pressure on you then, because you then sort of can't, people say to you, how's the book coming along? You can't say, well, I haven't started it yet. So as soon as I finished in my last role, I started to write. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
A lot of people say, though, don't they? You hear people say, there's a book in everyone, everyone's got a book in them. But I don't believe that necessarily. And I think it must be incredibly difficult to write a book. And I suppose that's the bit about going from something that you've done all your life. You've been a very successful leader. You talked about boardrooms, but you know exactly what you're doing every day, how you're going to deal with that, your experience. And then all of a sudden that stops and you're going to write a book. And you can have all the ideas in the world, but the kind of the technicality of writing a book and publishing a book, and we, have those books, that's something else. That's completely different, surely.
Well, it is, but I think I got to a stage, I started to write and would read it back and think, that's pretty good. Yeah, I like that. That's great. And then I got to I'd written about 20,000 words, and that's where you become, or I became, I got to a crossroads. Am I writing this for my own self-satisfaction, or am I going to try and get it published? And of course, the vain egotist decided that this was going to be, brilliant.
Surely not.
Surely not. And so I thought, well, I might as well see what people think. And I found a literary agency called Cornerstones. And this is all about inner circles.
Yeah.
Well, writing is the most solitary thing you can do. And for people, everybody can write a book. No, not everybody can write a book. Not everybody would have the patience to do it. Not everybody would have everybody could jot words on a page. But I think the test of an author is, will anybody read it? Is that what you want? Do you want somebody to read this book? And if you do, then you suddenly learn that, and you learn pretty quickly, that you're now into a whole new world, because you can't do it on your own. It's impossible. So you have to find another inner circle. And I found mine as an author through Cornerstones, who provided me with a mentor. Not for nothing, obviously. Dosh Spondulix. And the mentor that I got turned out to be the most influential person as an author that I could possibly have met. He's well published himself. He's a Scottish guy. He works with people like Neil Broadfoot. He edits. He's great. But to say he is a hard taskmaster, it would be to understate that as well, because he tells it as it is. And so he got my 20,000 words.
Yeah.
And he said, shall we do a FaceTime?
You hadn't met him at this point.
Hadn't met him. I'd been sending him stuff, and we'd do it all on email.
Yeah.
And let's do an hour's call. Okay. So I did an hour's call, and it's been like back at school.
Yeah. It must have been really nerve-wracking.
It is. It was.
Sure.
Teacher's going to tell me.
Because you're putting yourself out there as well, though, aren't you?
I had a choice at that point. Do I put myself out there or not?
Right.
So I was still in the choice stage.
Yeah.
And Mark came on, and he's sitting there, and big screen, all this tech around him. He's a real techie.
Oh, okay.
And he's got everything going on, microphones here, all this, and chat away. So, what do you think? And he goes, yeah. He goes, it's got a lot of things going for it. But the one thing it probably hasn't got going for it is that you're not going to get it published. And I said, right, why is that then? And he said, because it which made me absolutely, being a Yorkshireman, that made me howl, because there was no airs and graces, there was no beating about the bush. That was it. But once he'd said it, there was no going back, obviously. But he then went on to say, but I think you can do this. He said, we'll have to change all this, but the story is good. And that's where we went. And he became an integral part of my life thereafter.
But you've laughed about that, and I get that. But again, having been someone that would walk into a boardroom and I spoke to Jane Ashcroft, who you also know, kind of on the last podcast, and she talked about that kind of just that waking up one day when she'd retired and realised that actually she wasn't the most important person walking into a room anymore. And although she didn't think that had been important to her, it obviously was. So, you're now in a world where that's happening for you, and you're now in a world where you've got some guy telling you your which is what you've probably spent, for all those people out there that maybe you did have those conversations with as a leader, and etc. So, how was that? I mean, genuinely, how did it feel? You laughed about it.
But genuinely, I liked it, because I'd spent 30 years listening to people, and in my mind, I'm thinking, you're talking absolute rubbish. But I'm part of a team. I might be leading that team, so I've now got to navigate those people into places where we can take the germ of truth or the fact, and we can get the whole team to look at that, and we can come up with a plan and a strategy. But what you can't do is just sit there and tell somebody that that's just rubbish. So I always welcomed people, be it a chairman that I might have had, be it an investor that I might have had. The people who told it to me straight were the ones that I got on with the best. I couldn't adopt that with people who had less experience than me, who were maybe a new director who I was going to have to coach through, and you could see the potential, but you can't knock them too hard. like a certain person sitting opposite me who came in with more energy than the rest of the organisation put together. But it was about shaping people and getting them to bring to the table all the good things that they had so that other people could learn. But nonetheless, I'll say it again, the people that I found the easiest to work with were the people who look you in the eye and tell it to you straight. So I always had that with you. I could do that with you, and you would do it back to me. And there were only one or two other people in the whole of the 30 years I had leading businesses that would do that. when I ran a business in South Africa, they all did it, which was a bit discomforting, but nonetheless, that was, Yorkshire meets South Africa. And so you got on with things there. And so going to someone like Mark and him telling it as it was absolutely ideal. And I think if you don't have that as an author, you're not going to succeed. If somebody flannels you, and because you're paying them a fee regardless of output. So the thing about an author is there is no guarantee of a sale. In a business that I ran, pretty much if you followed steps 1, 2, and 3, there was an outcome, which was a monetary value. And if you did that regularly and repeatedly, then the monetary value increased. There is no guarantee whatsoever with a book that you're going to do that. So anybody who flannels you, I have a proofreader called Suze. I don't know how you do proofreading. I have no idea how you have the patience to do that. I've told her this. I think she's a little mad, and she thinks I'm a little mad. But
you are a little mad, and your book shows.
Thank you very much indeed.
Well, people need to see kind of like where your whole psychological process is in those books. As I said earlier, some like now criminal mastermind or whatever you are. So you are mad.
No, I said I had a story, and I'll tell you very briefly how that story came about. I was watching the news. I was sitting in a flat in London, and I was watching the news. And in the news, there was this CCTV footage of a bloke coming out of a jeweller's. And he was a tall guy, West Indian guy in a suit with a black polo neck underneath it. And he had a bag in his hand, and the CCTV showed him walking down the road with this bag. And in that bag was 2 million quid's worth of jewellery that he'd just nicked. And they never found him until this guy fell out with his girlfriend. And his girlfriend found a latex mask of a West Indian guy in a drawer at home, and she shocked him. And it was him. He was a Caucasian guy who had put the silicone mask on, gone and robbed the jewellers, and they wouldn't have caught him except for that. And I thought, God, there's got to be a story in there. There has got to be a story in there. And then when you do the research so you find out everybody's doing it. If you're not wearing a silicone mask, you're absolute nobody. So,
that's Tom Cruise for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there we are. So that was how that came about. What were we talking about?
Well, we'll talk about you being kind of a psychopath now.
Psychopath.
Yeah. But they've always said, haven't they, actually, to be a really good CEO, like, maybe there are traces of being a psychopath. So there you go. Maybe you're absolutely,
again, untaken.
Yeah, you're seeing that through. Well, it's now ditto, isn't it, in that sense? So it takes one to know one, as they say. We'll explore that in a second. Anywho, so you've talked about the differences between the kind of the author world and the work world. Are there parallels there? Are there parallels that you've drawn on as well? And as you've been going through this kind of learning process and stuff, are there any parallels at all, or does it feel completely different?
There are a couple of parallels, not that many. The one is, and it's to do with being at the top of a business. If you are the CEO of a business, as you are, the fact that you have a close circle of people that you need and you rely on, there comes a point pretty much weekly as a CEO where you're on your own, where it is you, and you've got everybody supporting you, but nonetheless, it's like being a room on your own, and you have to make the call.
It can be very isolating, for sure.
Exactly. Well, being an author, there's you and a computer, and whatever is going on.
Well, and your murderers, and the murderers, and all these people that do all these really weird things.
Exactly. But nonetheless, once you shut the office door, it's you and them and nobody else. And you're not going to find out how people are going to react to this until much later. You're not going to. So you have a vision of the future up to 2030. Well, you can see the path that you're going to take to get there. Well, I can see a path to the end of the book, but I can't see what's going to happen to it thereafter. I've got to then go back into business world and go, right, how are we going to market this? What's the best way of doing it? What's the best bang for the buck? But the most crushing thing is, will anybody actually like this book? Is it just me writing, and will anybody actually read it? Unfortunately, people do, and they seem to like it. And
Well, they really do like it, don't they?
They don't know I'm a nutter.
Well, I think they do. I think the people who read it must know you're a nutter because it's Nutsville, Arizona, in a very, very positive way. So no, I mean you've been incredibly successful with it. So so Gabriel Galletti, author. We probably should explore that a little bit because that's not actually your real name, is it? For those people who don't know, that's actually not your real name.
It's
so
not.
Tell me about that.
So my name is Mark Lavery.
Ah, yeah.
Do you know that person?
There's a link there.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
we'll circle back around to that, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when I'd written it and was going to publish the first one, there's a guy called Mark Lavery who is a pretty well-known reporter for the Yorkshire Evening Post. And the first book, Best of Cold, is set in Leeds. And some people thought it might get confusing and think it was him that was writing this book. And he may well not want to be considered.
People? You mean some people who are currently filming this?
Filming this,
who are kind of a massive part of my inner circle. And yours too. Yeah.
Those people,
the silent people behind the camera,
pointed out to me that there was this guy. And so, I thought, okay, well, we've got a pen name. That's fine. Pen name's cool. And suddenly there's a whole world of possibilities. Now you don't have to be what your parents called you. You can be anybody you want to be.
So is this an alter ego thing as well then, do you think?
I don't know about alter ego. It's playtime, isn't it? It's, as you know. So how did we get to Gabriel Galletti? We got to Gabriel Galletti because we like Italia. We like the Italians. We like everything to do with that country. And we thought, we'll go for Italy. But somebody, again, who shall remain nameless for the moment, said to me, well, what would you have liked to be called if you could choose? And I said, don't know why, Gabriel. So we got Gabriel. And then we played with Italian surnames. But every name you put into Google, then you find out they're a murderer, they're a paedophile, they've been locked up for this, done that. So finding a name where there is nothing bad attached to it was quite difficult. But eventually we found Galletti. And it just so happens, I didn't know this at all, but on a bookshelf in a shop, G is at eye level on the shelves. Who knew? Who knew? And so Gabriel...
Maybe you did. Maybe just say you did. Yeah, I knew that. Yeah, absolutely. It was all a plan. It was all a big plan, you know?
Oh, so I'm going back to CEO. I'm going to claim credit.
Yes, absolutely.
Right,
yes,
okay.
Yes,
that was my idea. Right, nobody ever told me about Mark Lavery. Nobody ever. Yeah. So, and then it came. Gabriel Galletti. Yeah.
Okay.
Weird.
Well, no.
I think he's great, though. I quite like him.
Oh, no. Yeah. I quite like him, actually, as well. I've met him.
I like getting emails addressed to him from people who don't know there is somebody else behind that name. Who Dear Gabe, hi Gabe. It always makes me laugh. But anyway, there you go.
All the different persons, all the different personalities that you're currently harbouring in your head. Good Lord, who knew? Just one thing I just wanted to explore a little bit more is I've been really thinking a lot about the links between leadership and creativity, and I've been doing that quite a lot. You know, I paint, and so for me, I've been kind of trying to kind of explore: is there a real link between being a great leader and having kind of inner creativity? Now, I know that some people would argue that no, you know, I don't paint or I don't do this, but I'm still a good leader. But I still think there are different areas and avenues of creativity, and that actually, if you can really dig down deeply as a leader and dig into your inner creativity as to whatever that is, it really helps you to plan, to think differently, to be able to, you know, lead an organization and pivot and flex when you need to and adapt and change and all of those things. And I think that there is different levels of creativity. What's your kind of view on that now that you've gone from CEO to clearly, you know, creative writer? So do you agree, disagree?
I agree. I mean, somebody once said that the best leaders are engineers. And because they have the eye for the detail, but they also have an element of creativity about it. And the converse to that is the sort of negative view people have of accountants, who they see as just bean counters.
Yeah.
I don't think either of the two things are wholly true, but I think there's an element of truth in both of them. And as a business leader, I think an element of creativity is absolutely vital, because if you can't look forward and imagine what a future looks like for your organization, then you're not going to be able to get the people around you to follow that. And it is a little bit of guesswork. To say what's going to happen in 6 years from now, nobody really knows, but business leaders like yourself and like I was have to try and plan and think creatively about what that could look like.
Yeah.
And what is the art of the possible. And those words, the art of the possible, is a creative process.
Yeah.
And I found that businesses that stagnated were businesses where that didn't happen. There was a process, but nothing more than the process. So I would wholeheartedly agree. And I would also suggest that the more people you have in your team who are or have a creative mind in whatever shape or form, the more likely it is that you're going to have constructive meetings at executive level or board level, because there's things to discuss.
Yeah.
People have ideas, and the more those ideas are encouraged and brought out into the open and with the light shining on them, that's where, in my experience, a lot of people who were very creative fell down. They didn't want to bring it to the table for fear of either ridicule or that it just gets poo-pooed. But if you could get them to have that confidence, I found then suddenly, ideas that I'd never had, you go, wow, that's great. And again, in my experience, some of the people who you would have never thought would be going out of the office thinking about stuff and coming back and bringing this. And what do you think about this? Wow. Most unlikely people, which is why I mention accountants, because sometimes I think they get much maligned sometimes, because some of the best and most creative discussions I've had are with FDs who bring an element of reality to it, but also if they get it, they'll make it happen. And they can, I found it very productive with those guys. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So, do you wish you'd have done this sooner? Would you become an author sooner, or are you happy with the timings of, kind of having that business career and then writing on now that you're just about to publish your third book?
Yeah.
Reflection?
I don't think you can look back and go, again, there's no guarantee of success. I could have started writing when I was 23, 24, 25 and stopped writing when I was 26 because you don't get anywhere.
Yeah.
And never picked up a pen again. So for me, no, I don't have any regrets about it. And also a lot of the characters are very recognizable to certain people because they go, I'm sure he said that in a meeting once. I'm sure so-and-so said that line. And they are real people. The characters may not be, but the words are from people that I've met throughout their career.
Life experience, basically.
Life experience. And
lived experience, I guess. Well, I hope it's not too much lived experience, having read the books.
No, you're safe, I think.
Oh, that's good.
It would be a bit too obvious, wouldn't it? That'd be obvious.
I have said to a number of my friends that, if I never turn up for work or to certain, to lunch with the girls, then they need to go digging under the big fir tree in the garden.
I never bury the bodies. They're always found.
Whether that's comforting or not, really. But nonetheless, there is little letters everywhere that people will know it's you.
Yeah. These are just, I have to say, these are just ideas. They're not real.
Yeah, try living with a criminal mastermind. Yeah.
I live with an obsessive compulsive mastermind, so I know all about that. Yeah.
So on that then, maybe we should come clean for those people who don't know that we've kind of alluded to it. So Mark Lavery. So not only did we meet years ago and have worked together, and not only are you a massive part of my inner circle and has been kind of a real supporter and encourager of me throughout my career, but you are also Mr. Marriott-Lavery. Is that right?
No, I'm Mr. Lavery. You're Mrs. Marriott-Lavery. We won't have a domestic.
Well, maybe we will.
Yeah. I'm also the recipient, now that I do writing and play a bit of golf.
A bit of golf.
And you're a CEO. I'm the recipient of your disorder, aren't I? So lists form a part of my daily and ongoing existence.
Indeed.
And I can walk into my office and find an updated list pretty much every day. There'll be things crossed off and new things added. And I don't know who does that, but it certainly isn't me.
It's the list fairy.
I think
Did you not know about the list fairies? You know, you have like the tooth fairy.
Yeah.
As you get older, you get a list fairy.
Right.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think the most creative.
Yes.
Creative. You see, this is where your mind works, you see, and this is why I sort of incorporate some of the thinking. So in an effort to make sure that this guy you married, who will do what he wants to do when he wants to do it, actually meets what you want him to do, you took recently to putting Post-it notes on my shoes with lists.
I did.
So that when I went to put my shoes on, you know, what is that? And there it is. It's a list.
Yes.
And that's my life now.
Well, it's not that, is it? It's a male-female thing for sure. It's Venus and Mars. So, yeah, I see stuff that you don't see. So I walk around that house and you're, absolutely 8 hours a day with your criminal masterminds, with all your characters in your head, with all your friends. Basically, for those who know, with Chad Hilton, who's now, this love-hate relationship that you have with your kind of, your hero come kind of anti-hero. Yes, you think he's an idiot. Everyone else loves him. So you spend the day with him. So I need to make sure that you also do the other things that need doing around the house.
Yeah.
So that's it.
So obviously you've tried asking me to do those things, but I haven't found that you get the desired results.
Because what men say is, and it's a thing, and I'm sorry for all the men out there who probably don't do this, and I'm massively generalising, but some of the men that I've kind of worked with and that I've seen, and the one I live with, does that like, no, but I will. Have you? Did you? No, but I will. So So I'm either going to get you a T-shirt with no, but I will, or we'll just keep going Post-it notes on shoes.
Or maybe stop asking.
Or maybe start doing. Maybe start doing.
Okay, we won't have a domestic.
And I think we just did. I think that was quite fun.
We're husband and wife.
We're husband and wife. Yeah. Although I find those
Mrs. Galletti.
Mrs. Galletti. Well, it was funny because obviously, for my paintings, I am thinking of starting to, sign them Scarlett Galletti.
Yeah.
So that becomes my kind of like, my alter ego. So we can, because, what's good for the goose and all of that.
Yep.
So if you've got one, I've got to have one.
Yep.
So, so I'm thinking now from here on in, I start signing paintings Scarlett Galletti.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
Imagine
it though, fake a fortune 100 years from now.
Yeah, true.
And they're going, wow, is this the same artist?
Yeah. They're like, oh no, the kind of evolution here. Is this the same person? Look at this.
Why is she doing this?
Yeah, exactly. Well, because the husband had one, so she had to have one. That's just the way we roll. That's just the way we roll. So, in all seriousness, though, the reason that I've asked you to talk to me about the kind of the Join the Dots, the Beyond the Dots, the podcast stuff that I've been doing, is because you are a massive part of my inner circle. Because clearly, not just because you are my husband and that's kind of expected, but I guess kind of the things that we've been through sort of collectively as a partnership, who both were CEOs who worked and worked at a really high level, and so we had to navigate our lives in that way, that we were both kind of two very sort of ambitious, very focused career people. And now you've taken a different turn, which I'm incredibly proud of you in what you're achieving. But there is a different world now that you also support me now to enable me to be able to do what I am doing, and to do things like this, for example, to be the CEO, to also be a trustee, and, a role that I've just recently taken up with Leonard Cheshire. And, so you do, as much as we joke about the list, you keep house to some extent, and that's a massive change. And when I spoke to Jane Ashcroft last time in the last podcast, she talks about Jonathan, who, her husband, who's kind of, they took that sort of same path as well, that, to enable, I suppose, just different parts of your lives, your journey, that you say, right, this is kind of how we're going to do this. So yes, I do write your list, but it is really important, I think, that we have that kind of support network as an individual, and it allows me to go off and do what I need to do. And even things recently, like you supported me with my parents, because my parents are, coming elderly and infirm to some lesser degree. And, and you're great with all that. So how does that feel kind of differently as well from the guy that travelled to Australia 5 times a year and went to South Africa and did all those things?
It's times of life, I think, isn't it? It's you get yourself ready to do things both mentally and physically. And I think the CEO bit is, the average length of tenure for a CEO is 4 years. And I don't think that's because CEOs are not very good at what they do. I think it's because the level at which they have to work, there comes a point where you either need a new challenge, so you have to go to another organization to recharge your own batteries and put into practice what you've learned from the others, or you need a rest. And I think with me, the choice was, well, do I go and do this again? And I was pretty clear I didn't want to do that. I'd done a number of companies, and at the end of it, you're doing pretty much the same things. But it is, if you're starting with, let's say you're putting a company through a transition period where there's a lot of change required, that takes not just mental power to see the plan and get it, but it's physically so demanding, as you're finding now, because you have to personally drive a lot of this stuff. And so I got to a point in my life where those things were not what I wanted to do anymore. And I'm not a particularly corporate sort of guy. I can play that part. But given a choice of spending a day listening to a bunch of private equity guys talking about how much money they're going to make is not what I would do, even though I can talk their language and they would willingly hire me. In fact, they used to hire me to do commercial DD on businesses. But anyway, that's beside the point. So shelf life, I'd had my shelf life. So I wanted to do something else. Doing something else, though, meant that I had to get in your head, if you like, because I realized the job you do. And, I can see the pressures of it. I understand the difficulties of it. And I don't want to tread on your toes with this. I know I have to give you space to do it. And I know I have to be a good listener, not somebody who waits to speak. I've got to be, I know you're an obsessive compulsive person. So I know that house has got to be absolutely spotless when you walk through the door.
You have somebody who cleans the house twice a week.
Twice. What good's twice? By day 3, the bloody place is a mess again. So,
well, it's only you and your characters that are there.
And I confine myself deliberately to my office, so therefore the place is. But I know all those things, and doing the shopping and doing all that sort of stuff. But that goes with the territory, and it's. I tell you, it's on a Thursday night when you're coming back from Liverpool, that's as terrifying as walking into the board meeting for the one you don't want to have to discuss the numbers in.
Do you go around like just checking for dust yourselves? Do you do like your own kind of inner check?
No, you see, because I wouldn't see that.
Oh.
See, that's you.
Exactly.
You might do that. I'm relying on Maria to clean that, and if she hasn't, God help her. We need to talk about holidays for that woman.
I know she has far too many holidays.
Far too many. God dear. Now, talk about inner circle. She needs to get on the program.
She does. Although, to be fair, I think she is. She's another great fan of Gabriel Galletti as well, isn't she?
She came through the door the other day and I cheered. She was gone from holiday.
I don't think she actually. I think you two just try and talk about your book and stuff and just chat having a coffee when I'm not there.
Well, she started saying to me, when's the next one? Would you give it a rest?
Would you give it a rest? I've got golf to go to 3 times a week. Lord, I've got my handicap to get down.
She thought like that. She'd come 3 times a week.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? When you think about it, since you've left work, and you've changed, you've now got, 3 books that you're writing your 4th, great. and your handicap's gone down to 13. So,
Yeah.
you know, rock and roll, really, eh? Doing good.
Winner, winner.
Oh, absolutely.
Winner, winner. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not-
well, you
not
keep
that
making the chicken dinners.
Not
and
that
we'll be
that
fine.
grates on you at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I ring you and it's like, oh, you know, you having a good day? Yeah.
No, you don't. You say, you play with the gimmers today then.
You can't say that because that's awful. Like,
But you've met them.
they're your friends. I think that's all we need to say on the subject, indeed.
You'll edit it out.
We will, or maybe not. So anyway, thank you for kind of talking to me today in a different way. It must feel a little strange, but I just thought that I really wanted to explore with you because I think the one thing that I find absolutely fascinating, and I said it at the beginning, is that you have gone from kind of leader to apprentice, from tutor to learner, and that's the bit of this whole process that fascinates me because we've not really kind of gone in the detail of it. But and you know, I mean, when you were CEO, you didn't even answer your own emails. You know, you just didn't. You know, you had an EA who did all that for you. You know, your patience around things like tech and IT, and kind of so joking apart now, you sit there, don't you? You type. You know, you kind of pretty much touch type to some extent. You've learned, you know, all the ways to navigate different bits of software. In each book that you write, you get better at. I've seen you on webinars where you've been listening about even how to kind of not just technically write the book, but also how to market the book, you know, how to start using social media, all those things that you would never have done in a million years. So I think it's...
With a little help from my friends.
Yes, sat behind the camera. But it has been a massive learning curve. I've seen you change hugely in terms of going from kind of codependency around what would have been an inner circle to having to be really dependent and pick up vast new skills. And that's the thing for me that, yeah, you know, I never doubted you'd be able to actually have that creativity to write a book because you've always been like super bright and stuff. But the doing of it and the learning of it and the technicality of you sitting there doing that on your own, I think is something that I really wanted to kind of get that across. That you know, people say you what's the saying that you can't teach a dog new tricks or an old dog new tricks. Well, I think that's rubbish because I think you have like, no, I'm calling you an old dog. Oh
Yes,
God, it doesn't it? It's really good. We need to look back at all the really nice compliments we made each other today. So no, but it's true though, isn't it? Like seriously,
And you've got to have a will to learn, don't you? Sometimes you meet people who will only ever talk about things that they did in the past. And they're not interested in current affairs. They're not interested in sort of life, really.
Yeah.
But if you have an interest and if you keeping your mind active and I've found anyway that writing helps me to do that. And, you know, if anybody, you know, ever looks at my Google history for some of the things that I put in this, I'm in big trouble, you know, because I'm looking up. I just tell you this thing is quite funny. In one of the books, the second one, I use a piece where the bad guy gasses people using nitrogen. And I rang up an air conditioning company in Guiseley and they put me through to the technical people. And I said, look, this may sound odd, but I'd love to know, is it possible that you can feed nitrogen through an air conditioner? Anyway, we had this great conversation and there it is in the book. And it's all true. It's all true. It can be done. So
we're learning all sorts.
So you think, but once you, it's like, if you just open the curtains a little bit, you see a little bit. If you open them wider, you start to see more. And you can't stop then because you've got to see the whole picture. So once you have an idea of nitrogen, that might work because the Russians did it, by the way, to the Chechens in a theatre, Chechen terrorists, and they put nitrogen in there, wiped them all out. Anyway, by the by. Once you do it, your mind or my mind is going, I've got to find out how that works. And then once you've found out how it works, you can start to write about it with some authority.
There's curiosity.
Curiosity. Yeah.
Creative curiosity.
Yeah, there you go.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to go home now and write you a list because, you know, you've been here for a few hours and I'm sure there's lots of jobs that you need to do.
Okay. But I'm going to go and find somewhere nice because there's a very attractive red-headed lady who's going to buy me lunch.
Is she?
Yeah.
Oh, we will see. So there's bribery and corruption as well. Well, Gabriel Galletti, Mark-Lavery, thank you very much. Super proud of you. And yeah, book 3 coming out soon. That was a plug. That was an absolute plug.
Portrait of Evil.
A Portrait of Evil. Excellent. Excited.
In fact, picture in the background is Deb. For those who don't know, paints all my covers. So the artwork for my books, Deb does, and then they go off and they jazz them up. And that's the next one.
Scarlett Galletti paints.
Yeah, Scarlett Galletti.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.